Inside the crumbling ruins of a city in modern-day Syria, archaeologists found a desperate message left baking inside a stone kiln. It was a clay tablet written by King Amurapi of Ugarit. He wrote that enemy ships were already burning his ports, and his own army was too far away to help. The invaders breached the walls, and the city fell before the letter could ever be sent. If you want to uncover more lost chapters of human history, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Ugarit didn't burn alone. It was simply the first domino. Within a span of just 50 years, nearly every major empire in the known world would be erased from the map. These were the superpowers of the Late Bronze Age: the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, the Egyptians, and the Assyrians. They built sprawling, monumental capitals defended by massive cyclopean stone walls. And they were not isolated kingdoms. We know exactly how closely connected they were thanks to discoveries like the Uluburan shipwreck, a merchant vessel that sank around 1300 BC. This map traces the cargo found in its hull. It was carrying 10 tons of copper from Cyprus, tin dragged across deserts from Afghanistan, ebony wood from Africa, and amber traded all the way down from the Baltic Sea. They had constructed a highly complex, interdependent global economy. But a system this codependent was fragile. If one major supply chain snapped, the entire network faced starvation. The historical breaking point is typically pinned to the year 1177 BC. That is when a massive, unidentified maritime force, known to us only as the Sea Peoples, arrived on the shores of Egypt. Pharaoh Ramesses III managed to hold the line, repelling their fleet at the Battle of the Delta. He ordered his victory permanently recorded across the vast stone walls of his temple at Medinet Habu. The Egyptian carvings detailed specific enemy factions, including the Sherdin and the Peliset, a group historians often identify as the biblical Philistines. But the carvings also show women, children, and ox-drawn carts moving alongside the warriors. The Sea Peoples were not a structured military empire on a campaign of conquest. They were refugees. These groups were pushed out of their homes by the same environmental pressures that were already dismantling the empires they invaded. Their arrival was a reaction to the larger collapse, not its primary driver. Geologists point to what they call an earthquake storm. Over a 50-year window, a continuous sequence of tectonic ruptures rippled along the major Mediterranean fault lines. Between 1225 and 1175 BC, intense seismic activity shattered the administrative centers of Troy and Mycenae. The quakes shifted massive stone blocks right off their foundations, crippling their physical infrastructure. This chart illustrates the second blow, a multi-decade mega-drought confirmed by modern tree ring and pollen data. Rainfall across the eastern Mediterranean dropped steeply heading into 1200 BC, failing to reach the minimum threshold needed to grow crops. These ancient states were trapped in a vice. Earthquakes repeatedly leveled their cities, right as the surrounding farmlands dried up and stopped producing food. With no rain, consecutive harvests failed. The resulting famine pushed the heavily taxed lower classes to their breaking point, sparking violent internal rebellions against the ruling elites. This severe lack of food is what forced hundreds of thousands of people out of their homelands and onto boats, creating the outward migration of the Sea Peoples. As displaced populations swept across the Mediterranean, the crucial shipping lanes were severed. Suddenly, copper from Cyprus could no longer connect with the tin from Afghanistan. Without that tin, palatial states could not forge new bronze weapons. Armies lost the ability to rearm, leaving their capitals defenseless against both internal revolts and starving migrants. The global trade network unraveled, and centuries of civilization vanished. The Hittite Empire was entirely wiped out. In the Aegean, palaces burned to the ground, leaving behind overgrown stone foundations and a heavy 400-year silence over Greece. In the fallout, the Mycenaeans lost the ability to read and write. As palaces burned, their script, Linear B, vanished. Without writing, their sprawling world faded into oral tradition, surviving only as myths of the Trojan War. Hit the subscribe button to keep exploring the history that was nearly lost to time. This literacy wasn't a common skill. It was a specialized tool used only by palace scribes. When the central administrative hubs burned and bureaucracies vanished, the knowledge of reading died with them. Within a single generation, the survivors were left living among ruins they could no longer explain. The severe collapse left the survivors with no choice but to adapt to extreme scarcity. Because the international shipping lanes were dead, acquiring the ingredients to mass-produce bronze was no longer scientifically possible. Blacksmiths were forced to find a material they could mine locally. They turned to a much harder metal with a higher melting point that they had largely ignored during times of plenty: iron. The Iron Age was forged directly out of the ashes and forced necessities of the late Bronze Age collapse. It leaves us with a stark historical warning. No matter how complex a network becomes, a series of natural and human disruptions can bring the entire system down in a single lifetime.